Welcome back to the Act2 podcast, a podcast for the real-life working screenwriter. I'm Tasha Hugh.
And I am Josh Hallman.
And you may hear my puppy throughout this entire podcast, because she's right next to me, being very loud.
Yeah.
Can you hear her, Josh Hallman?
Do you want the truth, or do you want me to lie?
Okay. Give us a rating. Write a comment. Tell us the weirdest thing an exec has ever said to you in a general.
Yeah.
The weirdest question they've ever given you. I'm curious about that.
And by the way, although I can hear Indy just a little bit in the background, if you don't like what you hear, you don't like dogs. So that's that's on you.
So you have no soul, and it's your fault.
Yeah, that's your problem. I like that question. Do you know the answer to your question?
I know. It's a hard question, Indy.
Oh, God. This is going to be the best podcast we've ever recorded.
All right. Well, today, let's just cut to the chase. Today, we're doing some This Week's in Writings, and Josh has some interesting tidbits of industry stuff.
Listen, we're bringing a new segment on the Act2 podcast because Tasha and I, we always talk about things that are happening. We'll send links to each other. And, oh, my God, did you see James Gunn's taking over the DC universe? Things like that. And then Tasha was like, hey, why don't we do like a news segment on the podcast? And I thought to myself, yeah, let's do it. So there's a few things that I picked out of the news that are hopefully going to be somewhat relevant that we can talk about. And I'm going to bring them up here because they're things that are happening in the industry. Are you ready for this, Tasha?
I'm so ready. Let's go.
All right. This is something I just read, and I think it's actually important because it somewhat pertains to the last episode, and it is about a Friday the 13th prequel that has been greenlit over at Peacock. It's called Crystal Lake. It's from Brian Fuller, who did the Hannibal TV show and Pushing Daisies and Dead Like Me. And basically, what I was reading about it, because there's no plot for it yet. It's an expanded prequel, is what it's called. And this is why this is interesting to me.
It's a movie or a show?
It's a show.
Okay.
Is because just last episode, I kind of went off on that ramble about what are we going to do with horror franchises and where are they going to go and why do we have to keep locking on to these like characters of like Jason Voorhees and Freddy and this and that. And I'm excited for Crystal Lake. It's cool. It's a cool title, but it's like, are we about to create some brand new mythology around Crystal Lake where there's like serial killers that existed before Jason? I don't know. Sounds cool.
Maybe it's like a haunted lake, and that's where it all starts. That's what created him. It's not his fault. It's the lake's fault. There's a demon out there.
Are we going to humanize Jason Voorhees?
It feels like the trend is to humanize villains.
It does.
So
it
it's
does
entirely
seem like
possible.
I think you're referring to Dahmer right now, maybe. And as someone who grew up in Milwaukee during Dahmer,
Yeah.
I could tell you I have absolutely zero interest in watching that show.
Me too.
Because, I could care less about humanizing Dahmer. Anyway, so that's that.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because this is going to continue to happen, right? Because IP is super precious and becoming more and more and more and more and more for the last 10 years. We've been saying this more popular because it's a built-in audience and there's some safety, less risk to the people who have the purses doling out the millions of dollars to make these things. So I'm trying to think of like the lesson we can learn as writers and thinking about these things. And for instance, something I'm always trying to crack just in the back of my mind is like, what is the Tasha spin on a fairy tale that we haven't heard before? Like, I want to see that version. Because every time like a new fairy tale story comes out or a rated R princess movie, whatever it is, like, I'm like, why didn't I write that? There's something cool to finding an IP and doing your version of it. And I think it's completely valid to do that. If you're a horror fan, you really can't work unless you're hired by this company. You can't really work on literally the Crystal Lake, prequel movie, the Jason prequel.
Yeah.
But something you can do is what they did, let's say, for Mulan. For Mulan, the live action movie, it started as a spec. Disney did not hire someone to write that movie. It was a spec that went out. These two women, I believe two women, co-wrote it, and they just wanted to do a Mulan movie. And the hope is, of course, fingers crossed, Disney will buy it and make it. But if not, it's based on a public domain historical figure, so I can do whatever I want. Something that I've learned to do, because pitches take so much time, is that if I'm pitching on an IP, I will often create a story that I could technically just take out the IP from the story that I've created and still have the foundation of a spec I could write on my own. Mm-hmm. So if you really love Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and you want to do a prequel and you don't have access to, studios who are making those movies, I kind of wonder if you just go for it, but like take out the stuff that makes it the IP. Don't mention the names, slightly change who Freddy is in your version. But if someone reads it, they can be like, oh, this could be the next installment of the Freddy franchise. The way that J.J. Abrams does for a lot of his movies. Bad Robot often just seeks out, reads kind of any up-and-comers sci-fi scripts that could be made for a price, that could be cool, that seem to fit in the JJ brand. And then they'll sometimes find a way to kind of, sort of shove it into the JJ Abrams universe.
Yeah.
What was the latest movie they did that with?
Cloverfield Paradox.
Yeah, that one was not meant to be part of the Cloverfield world.
I don't think the second Cloverfield Lane, that wasn't either. That was based off of a spec as well.
Yeah.
Wow, I think you just cracked into something that I'm sure has been talked about before, but that's brilliant because that happened also with Ballerina, which now is inserted into the John Wick universe. And if you can somehow figure out a way to write a spec that could merge into the IP, then you've hit the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Of course, without naming the IP at any point. Yeah.
Right.
Do it.
I think
Done.
I'm gonna. Yeah. And by the way, put a pin in what you just said about you figuring out how to write your Tasha version of a fairy tale, because at the end of this little news segment, I'm gonna drop something in that could inspire you, or maybe not at the same time.
I was gonna say, blow me up or inspire.
No. Yeah, it'll inspire you. All right. Little piece of news, part 2. I won't do that again. Hocus Pocus, part 2, Tasha. Speaking of IP.
Yeah.
It set a freaking record for the most streaming minutes ever for a Disney Plus, like for any streaming anything, at 2.7 billion minutes in the first weekend. It's already the most watched Disney Plus thing ever. Like more than any Marvel, more than any Pixar. Hocus Pocus 2. And we just left October.
I don't understand. I do understand because I watched it, because I love Hocus Pocus, the original, and so does basically every other human being on the planet who's ever seen it, apparently. Mm-hmm. So we all go and watch Hocus Pocus 2, but we don't rewatch that, do we? After we see it, we're so horrified by it that we don't rewatch it.
Horrified?
Yeah? No?
Well, as the resident parent to a 7-year-old child, let me tell you that just yesterday, my daughter said to me, Dad, can we watch Hocus Pocus 2? And I watched like 15 minutes of it and then we turned it off. So I don't know what's going on. It's like a rewatchability for 15 minutes at a time. I don't know.
Like she got bored?
Yeah, something else came up. I have no idea what happened. You just throw these things on.
I guess it's an easy Halloween movie to throw on in the background. You're not gonna get any violence and sex, although there's the great face eating scene in it, which is my favorite moment.
Oh my God. All right, moving on. I read that Avatar 3 is over 3 hours long. Are you going to be seeing Avatar 3, Tasha?
I'm going to be seeing Avatar 3. Is it Avatar 3?
Oh, wait. Avatar 2. Sorry.
2,
Avatar
right?
2 is 3.
I was like, did I miss one?
Well,
yeah, Avatar 2.
I just bring this up because I don't even know if this is news, but it's just crazy to me that it's taken like close to 20 years, it feels like, for a sequel.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest, Avatar was one of the biggest movies ever. And I just feel like we should have more Avatar in our life. It's like a Star Wars without any of the merchandise. I like it. It's weird to me.
It is weird because I just found out, because this is not something I knew for some reason, that Disney World has a whole land/ride that's dedicated to Avatar, which is so strange because, like you're saying, it's not present in our lives in any way. No one buys these toys because they're not fun in the same way that Star Wars is.
No.
We don't get any press about it ever.
Nothing. Is James Cameron just that big of a badass that he's like, fuck it. It's going to be over 3 hours. I don't care if you see it. I'm making it. Have fun. Here's my Avatar 2 movie. Oh, and there's, by the way, 17 sequels coming out, which I'm going to see all of them. I love Avatar.
Yeah, it was great.
James Cameron's never let me down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing with James Cameron is you hate him, right? I feel like Disney probably hates him for spending so much of their money.
Yeah.
But he's also guaranteed almost to give you a success. Mm-hmm. So you just kind of like take my money and I'm going to close my eyes until it comes out and I see the numbers.
It's going to be a success. It's James Cameron.
Per James Cameron, he's going to do something so technologically cool that there's no way we can't go see it. And then there's going to be nothing but articles about how James Cameron is saving cinema.
Mm-hmm. I hope so.
Because you can only see it in a movie theater.
If we get like a Maverick experience and an Avatar experience within 12 months of each other, I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to go on.
There's a theater in Los Angeles that I've not yet been to. You probably have. That's 4DX or something. The seats move. And there's like wind effects and stuff.
I haven't been to that one, but I've gone to the Century City Mall, and they have a really good theater there. And the seats were vibrating, and I thought there was actually an earthquake. I didn't know the seats vibrated, and I was like, oh shit! And then I realized like it was the seats from. Yeah. I was watching like Super Pets or something, but.
Well, if you're in Los Angeles, maybe go see Avatar normally, but then go see it in that. That's what I'm going to try and do. And, I mean, that's part of it. It's like a ride. Okay, moving on.
Last thing. All right. In this news segment, I thought it would be weird if we didn't highlight writers. And we're a screenwriting podcast. So these two writers and directors, Josh Epstein and Kyle Rideout, which when I read Kyle Rideout, I was like, that's an awesome name. It sounds like a superhero. They wrote a film. It's a feature. It's called Knights Camp. And it's basically about a group of 4 bubble wrap teens at a summer Knights training camp. And they're preparing to reenact an ancient battle when they are accidentally transported to the real battle in 1293. And I read that, Tasha. And I thought, wow, this screams of Tasha.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to highlight them as writers and the news and just throw it in your face at the same time.
That's what it feels like. It's just thrown at my face and it hurts so bad.
It reminds me of the Michael Crichton novel, Time Frame? What the hell? There was a Paul Walker movie.
The one you told me to adapt?
Knight's Tale? Knight's Time? What? How am I forgetting? Anyway, I'll remember. I'm looking at my books. Can't see it. But yeah, the one I think you should adapt. Yeah, absolutely. I think you'd kill it. But that's that. I just wanted to highlight those writers and this project that's coming up.
That sounds like a great idea. This reminds me of something. Not to do a tangent, but to do a tangent. Yeah. I was watching a Vince Gilligan interview the other day, probably posted by Screencraft because they always post really great interviews. But the interview with Vince Gilligan talking about when he got the idea for Breaking Bad. He said he was out of work, which I thought was really interesting because he, created X-Files, one of the greatest shows of all time. Mm-hmm. And he's out of work and he's lamenting.
He didn't create X-Files.
He wrote on X-Files, sorry.
Yeah.
And he's lamenting with his buddy, who's also a writer, how they're out of work and how terrible it is. And what are we going to do? And his buddy jokes that, we should buy a Winnebago and drive around Australia and sell meth out of our Winnebago and make some money that way. And they both kind of laughed because they're both really law-abiding people. And, oh, my God, that's such a huge jump. But then he was like, what would cause someone to buy a Winnebago and cook meth out of it? They would really be hard up on money. Why would a law-abiding person go to those lengths? And that was the root of Breaking Bad, which I always find interesting because whenever I hear people talk about Breaking Bad and its genius, they always say, oh, Vince Gilligan pitched it as Mr. Chips. What is it? What did they say? Mr. Chips
Scarface.
becomes Scarface.
Yeah.
Right? So like this kind of innocent, kind of doofy guy becomes the greatest mobster of all time. And I was like, oh, well, that because he pitched it that way, that must be the seed of his idea. And it absolutely was not. The seed of his idea came from this very simple conversation he had over the phone that was... So why I bring that up is because when you tell me this log line for this Knights camp, I think, oh, they're just geniuses. I am not a genius. There's no way I could have come up with this great idea. They're clearly geniuses because they are so good at high concept. And the truth is, they maybe like took their kid to a summer camp once and another kid was dressed up as a knight pretending he was in real battle.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that got them to this idea. You have no idea how they came to this idea. And I think when you read articles, it's hard to wrap your mind around it. So it's just, it's good to remember.
Yeah.
You're not an idiot. You just haven't found that idea yet.
No, and I also love that because we talk about this often, and I feel like even within, like, with you, me, Dave, whatever, we'll throw just crazy ideas or like weird jokes and offhanded jokes or whatever it is. And like Dave and I are kind of theoretically working on something, and it all started like from the seed of a joke where it was like, oh, what if these two guys got stuck in like a haunted house? And it was like that kind of idea was like, wait a minute, is there something to this? Is there something to this? And we just kind of went down that road. So I think it's really important to always kind of do that stuff with people and just throw shit against the wall because you never know what you're going to get. Make off-color jokes if you have to.
No idea or off-color joke is a bad one until it is.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's pretty much the roundup. I don't know if that was a good news segment, but...
That's great.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you for doing our first ever news segment.
That's a lot of pressure.
We'll have to give it a cool name. Newsies. No, it's terrible. Okay. This week in writing. All right, so I want to talk about managers for a second. And I want to talk about hip pocketing, which is a term that is a little vague, I think, until you're sort of in it. But a lot of people have heard this term hip pocketing. What hip pocketing means is it's usually with managers, not so much with agents, but my guess is it can happen with both.
I've definitely heard it a lot with agents, actually.
Okay. So, and it's usually younger agents probably that are going to do this because more experienced agents or agents who have their client list already set aren't even going to bother hip pocketing anyone. They're either going to sign you and spend time on you, or they're not going to waste their time at all. So it's usually younger agents who don't have a big client list yet or trying to get a client list together, and their reasoning behind hip pocketing you, which we'll explain what it is in a second, but the reason behind it is they aren't sure if you're totally right, if you're going to totally be a hit for them.
Yeah.
They don't know yet if they want to spend and risk their time management skills on you or wait till they have another writer. Because again, they're still building their writers list. And if they sign you, I'm definitely your manager and or agent, and you suck for them, or you're not producing enough material for them to get you work, or you bomb all of your meetings, or whatever it is you're going to do that's not great and that they can't promote you with, then they've wasted their time. So instead they choose to hip pocket you. And what that kind of means is that they're not officially your manager or agent, but they'll sort of act like it a little bit for now. So you'll until it gets good, right? Until they know that you've proven yourself and that you guys have a good working relationship and that they can make money off of you. So they'll say, hey, send me your stuff. Send me any producer names that you have relationships with already, anyone you have a relationship with in the business already. I'll try to meet with them and like get you meetings with them and see what they have available, because if they already like you and know you, that's, it's an easier way to get you a job with them. And they'll try to promote you for like kind of a short period of time.
Yeah.
And if in that short period of time you've not moved the needle at all, then that hip pocket, you'll start seeing that they're not going to start emailing you back anymore.
Yeah.
They're not really taking your calls because it's this kind of short-lived window where they're going to see if it works. And that's what hip pocketing is. And then to just talk about how to kind of maximize that if you happen to be in that situation, I would say be as proactive as possible. What the manager or agent wants to know, again, is that you are writing all the time. This is your passion. This is what you want to do with your life. You have a lot of material. You're constantly writing, because their worst nightmare is to have a writer on their client list who they have to call and be like, have you written anything? Like, where's your script? I can't sell anything of yours if you don't actually send me a script. What are you working on? They can't advertise you if you're not working on anything. So you need to show that you're actively working all the time. You need to have a clear vision for the kind of writer that you are. You're not a rom-com writer and also a horror writer who, also dabbles in sci-fi. Like, you know what you like to write, whether it's thematically, character-wise, world-wise, you know what genre you like. Like, you have a clear vision for who you are, because they can sell you that way. I can't sell you to work on Haunting of Hill House if the only samples you have are romantic comedies that are 30-minute TV shows. I need a horror sample, right? So that's all stuff that you guys need to get on the same page with. And then definitely try to have meetings on your own, and then definitely call them and be like, hey, I really want to meet with such and such producer. Ideally you have maybe like send them a list of 5 to 10 producers you want to work with. And the way you do this is you look at movies or TV shows that you love. Who produced them? What is the production company involved? And then send that email to your manager or agent who's hip pocketing you and say, I'd love to meet with these people. What do I need to do to meet with them? Because your manager or agent hip pocketing you may say, I don't have a sample that's right for them. Again, if you write all rom-coms and you really want to get into horror, so you're sending them a bunch of horror producers, he's going to say, or she's going to say, go write a horror spec first, and then I can send you over there. So that's another thing you can do to be proactive, is try to meet with producers actively. And then hopefully when you have these generals that he or she is setting you up with, when they call back to that producer and say, hey, how was Josh Hallman? They're like, oh my God, Josh Hallman was amazing. I loved him. Please send me anything else that you have of his. I'm so curious where his career is going. And then now this manager agent knows, okay, people like Josh. He's someone that people are responding to. That's worth my time. So that's a way to sort of maximize hip pocketing, and that's what it is.
Yeah. So so you summed up everything perfectly. I almost don't even want to say this because it's just me talking a little bit, but I am very aware of hip pocketing. I've had a lot of friends who've been hip pocketed actually in the acting world. And,
interesting.
Yes. And then I've definitely known people in the writing world. I can't think of it now, but I may have been hip pocketed at some point, and I might have just blacked it out in my memory. But it is very common. And I guess I just want to say the frustration I feel like with writers is that you grind, and then you find this manager. And I think a lot of writers at any level, you get to this point and you're like, I don't want to mess this up. Like whether that be the manager, agent, other job or something. And I think that's the most common at any, like, especially when you just start working with someone. If someone hip pockets you, you kind of feel like you're working for your manager, which is not right, but it's totally normal to feel that way. And you just have to get your mind out of that mode and be like, we're working together. Sure, technically this person works for you, I guess, but it should be a relationship. Don't treat a manager, don't be aggressive. Like, I want to do this, but just be as proactive as you can. Like you're saying.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
Have, I think content is king in the sense of just always have your scripts ready and be ready to show people it. But I guess you just kind of have to get over this mental hurdle of, you don't want to do wrong. And because it's so easy to fall into that trap. I understand it completely. I've been in that trap with someone I had worked with, where I was like walking like, oh my God, this person's not going to send me out because I'm going to send too many emails. And it's hard to do, but you have to kind of get out of that mindset.
Yeah. I think you put it really well too, that don't feel like you work for them, but also don't feel like they work for you, that you are a team. And I agree with not sending a ton of emails. Don't be too worried about it. But if you're sending a lot of emails, there's a sense of desperation there. There's a sense of not being organized, because could 10 emails have been 2 emails maybe?
Totally.
And why are you sending so many emails? And I get this question a lot of like, but what is too many emails, right? And you know, we're talking about sending scripts. That's an email with the log lines of the script. Another email is the producers you want to meet with, and then kind of let it go. Work your thing, meet people, keep writing. And then if you're not hearing back, let's say this agent manager hip pocketing you said, I'm going to go out with your script, TBD, I'll get back to you. And it's been a week. Mm-hmm. Let it go. He or she is finding people to send this script to. Those people then have to read it, and it takes a lot of time. Usually samples are the least of people's worries, so it takes them several weeks to even get to reading it. These are producers I'm talking about. So give it a few weeks, 2 to 3. I would say push towards 3, and then check in and say, hey, have you heard anything back on the script that you sent out? Mm-hmm. And create a pattern like that versus think of it as a relationship that's romantic. If you send a bunch of texts and you send a bunch of emails, that's going to kind of put the person off, right? So it's a very similar partnership in that way.
I love it. Moving on.
Okay. I've been having a lot of conversations about showrunners the last week. Well, the last couple months, I would say. A lot of writers are talking to me about their horror stories from their own writers' rooms and with showrunners, because the attitude of a writer's room trickles down, right? And the showrunner kind of sets the tone for how people are going to be treated in their room. And it's kind of horrifying, the amount of people telling me how bad the rooms are and how bad the showrunners are. And when I say bad, it means they're literally treating people poorly, insulting them in the room in front of everyone, deliberately belittling them in front of everyone, creating scenarios deliberately so that the writers within their room are competing against each other and kind of at each other's throats. Because, for example, in my room, I assign everyone a script from day one. Everyone knows what script they're going to be working on. I think some people, showrunners, get scared of doing that because, Josh, if you're assigned to episode 3, why do you care what's going to happen in episode 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8? They're not your scripts, right? Mm-hmm. I don't understand that personally, because you're going to need to know what happens in episode 1 and 2 to write your 3. Not to mention, when I hire you, we're part of a team. We're trying to create the best possible show. Why aren't you going to pay attention? Yeah. So that fear doesn't totally make sense to me, though I will allow for there are some writers who do check out, and they do that. But I feel like that's probably a minority.
Yeah.
But showrunners will often hold back what episodes their writers are writing because they want that competition. They want me and Josh to compete for every episode, so we're constantly paying attention on every single episode that we're breaking, just in case I get assigned to it. And I also want the best idea, because I don't want Josh to write this episode. I want to write this episode. So there's this constant sense of competition that showrunners will create in the rooms, which becomes very toxic. That's so stressful even just talking about it, right? The best room is a room where you're just going to chill and to talk about story. Best idea wins. Let's just hang out and talk about story stuff.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting because my friends have been like, how do we prevent ourselves from becoming that? Because if that seems to be so common among showrunners, how do we avoid that kind of ego trip? And I think what I'm observing, my assumption, is that it comes from fear. It's so scary. Let's say you're a showrunner with a room of 4 writers, and Josh is one of my writers, and he turns in a script that's so fucking good. It's so good. I don't have to barely do anything with it. He sends it in and it's amazing, and I send it right to Netflix to get approval. To me, that's scary, because is Netflix going to read this awesome script from Josh Hallman and think, well, why isn't Josh Hallman running the show? It's such a good script. And I think showrunners have this constant fear of being replaced. It's such a difficult job, and there's so much writing on it that I think fear naturally comes with it. So these showrunners react from that fear and try to resource guard the way a dog
that makes
does.
sense.
And I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that and bring that conversation up, because A, if you're experiencing that in a room, that's where it's coming from. And B, if you're going to be a showrunner, it's important to to stop yourself before it gets there. It's not to say that you're not going to have fear. I do. Every day there's insecurity. This example of someone turning an amazing script happened to me, and I was like, oh shit, this guy is so good. He should be running the show. And then I was like, no, Tasha, calm down. It's okay. It's okay for other people to be great writers, and that has nothing to do with my job security. So it's just important to always catch yourself when you're having these thoughts, and that's what I just wanted to talk about.
Well, I mean, this is easy for me to say because I'm not a showrunner, but I feel like I would love it if I was working with a group of writers and then you have this one writer that's just amazing and they turn in something that's great, because I feel like you're creating this atmosphere and you're creating this environment where, like you were saying earlier, we're all working together. This is our show. This isn't my show. Yes, I am the showrunner. However, this is a joint effort. If you're not on board with that, that's fine. You're not a part of this team, but that's what we're doing. And I feel like you want to have the show where, like going back to Vince Gilligan and the X-Files, is where it's like, wow, look at all of these amazing people came out of this one show. Look at this shit. These writers on Lost created this, and this, you know? And so for me, that's personally very exciting. And like, you almost want to be the showrunner that makes people be better.
Create showrunners.
Yeah. You want to create showrunners where you're like,
Yeah.
you're like the Judd Apatow tree of like, boom, I've done this. Well, I guess those are actors, but you know, you create like a lasting impression. And I feel like that's how you create longevity, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that's right. And you can choose two paths. You can choose the hero path or you can choose the villain path. And if you're self-aware enough, I think you can choose the hero path, which is harder because I do feel the fear is real. It's so hard to get a job, to sell anything, that the resource guarding makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, let's say Josh, you mentor me as a showrunner, and then I grow up and I become a showrunner, and you're out of work for a year. Yeah. I'm like, hey, Josh, I love you. Thank you so much for mentoring me. Like, come be my co-EP. Yeah. And then you now have a number 2 spot and you're making great money. So like there's also that piece of it. Like the way they say like jobs beget jobs, I think like kindness begets kindness.
Totally.
As well.
EP, man. That's the dream job right there.
I know.
Yeah. No, I like that because I like the point of view is if you're a writer, or the perspective of if you are a writer and you're experiencing what you're talking about. That's good to know that showrunners also face fear and they face issues and they are normal people just like everybody else, and they're trying to figure it out and just make something that's great and put food on the table at the end of the day. It's all, you know, and have shelter.
Quick story about that.
Food?
No, so like, maybe. A friend of mine was talking to me about, she was on set for her show, and she's told me before that her showrunner doesn't allow the writers on set. He doesn't like it. And I was like, oh, like he invited you guys all on set? That's pretty impressive. And she's like, yeah, he invited us, but told us specifically not to do any producing. You know, like, don't talk to actors, don't participate. You're just here to watch and observe and learn. She's like, but I ignored him and I helped out. Yeah. And he didn't realize he needed that. Like, he was so controlling and so scared that he was going to lose his job. So he that was how he reacted, was to micromanage everything, do it myself. I don't want any writers getting into my business because that threatens my job. But he needed the help so badly because it's such a hard job that when she stepped up to help him, he was like, oh, thank you. You know what? When the other writers go home, will you stay? Because I need your help more. So now she's like this valued asset because she helped out more. So it does that illustrates how much the fear can kind of corrupt showrunners a little bit. And she operated from a place of kindness. You know, hey, do you need help? I will do anything you need me to. It wasn't ego or anything. Yeah. And he really needed that. So that shows you a lot, I think.
I love that. All right, should we move on?
Yes.
I want to say something as we're the next topic. I just need to say something before I forget. Sort of This Week in Writing. I finally watched Don't Worry, Darling. And I got to say.
Yeah.
I was into it. I can't even believe it. Maybe it's those expectations because I read so much there was so much controversy, but it kind of killed me because I saw the Van Dyke brothers had a story by credit as opposed to written by, and just seeing that on the screen after reading the script, and we've talked about this before, it hurt me. I just felt bad. I felt bad for them, and it's gonna happen to you,
me.
Us, everyone. Yeah, I mean,
Everyone
it's
here,
everyone that's listening, and there's gonna be a time when it happens. You get rewritten from a really good idea, and it sucks. And but I have to say, the movie was right up my alley.
Was it very different then?
No, I mean, it wasn't that different, but it was different. There were some differences, and I'm a little bummed there's so much controversy around it, because I actually did find it engaging. Like, I was like, what is happening in this movie?
It's interesting then that they got a story by instead of
I know.
Next thing that I want to talk about. So this last week, as I've mentioned on this podcast, I'm being rewritten on something, and I happened to walk into the room where the new writer and the producers were all meeting to discuss notes on the revisions that this new writer has done. And it was on set, which is like the situation that it happened in, because otherwise it's rare that would happen. But it happened, and I felt everyone tense in the room. Like, why is she here? And oh no, is she gonna freak out? Like, I don't know what their POV on the situation was, but the tension was real. Oh
shit! It's like Jerry Maguire.
It was Jerry Maguire. So I came in and I was gonna just sit down and start talking to them and hearing like, okay, where are we with the script? And is there anything I can help with? And blah, blah, blah. And instead I grabbed my notebook and I left.
Oh!
And I acted like I needed to go somewhere, because I was embarrassed that they felt this way and that I was not welcome in this room. So I went outside. I called my manager, because she had called me anyway. So we just talked about other things. And then I was like, I'm going to bring it up with her and see what she has to say, because this is bothering me. So I said, hey, I just walked into this room and this happened and I don't know what to do. And she's like, you go in there right now. You are a warrior. She's like,
oh, I love 1L.
She's like, you deserve to be in that room. You wrote the draft that they're able to get produced. She's in there revising, but that doesn't mean she's not revising off of your draft. Like, go in there and play your part. And you belong there, and let it be on them to kick you out if that's something they're going to do. And since I need to work on confidence, I did that. And you know what? They didn't kick me out. And I had great contributions to give. I had great thoughts to add. And it was really interesting to watch this other writer work and hear the way she thought. And it was a great learning experience. It was all only positive. And I ultimately left earlier. Like, I didn't stay for the whole notes meeting. I left when I wanted to. Power move.
Yeah,
but
I love it. No, I love this.
But yeah,
story.
it was great. Like, it really helped out to have someone just kind of pep talk you. And we had an idea that I needed to get like an earbud and just have her in my ear whenever I go to meetings, so she can be like, you deserve to be there. Don't you get up. You stay right there.
I love this, because she's absolutely right. And this is like my favorite Tasha story ever. Now it just took the top spot, because she's right. Like, it should be on them to tell you to leave. And they've made all of these decisions. You're a professional. You're doing your job. You deserve to be there. So if they have a problem, they can tell you to go. And that's awesome. I love that.
I guess so. Turned out okay.
If we're burying our souls, I'm going to bring something up that I haven't.
Yes, please.
I haven't. So there's something I'm working on, and I have not heard. Like, I was supposed to get an update from a executive at this company, and I sent her a message weeks ago, and I hadn't heard from her, which is really uncommon. It was really strange. I was like, that's weird. She never wrote me back. And then I talked to one of the producers on the project, who essentially was like, yeah, just shoot her an email. She'll get back to you. And I was like, all right, this is crazy. I haven't heard from her. Then last week, I wrote my manager and I said, hey, Jay-Z, I haven't really heard from so-and-so. This is really weird. Do you mind reaching out now? Because just to put a pin in this is why it's really important to have reps, because I feel like I can do everything and I can reach out to people, but it is nice to have somebody do things for you on your behalf in that.
Yeah.
However, my manager reaches out to her and it's been radio silence, and it's been like eating at me and kind of freaking me out. I haven't even heard back from my manager yet, which I was going to follow up with them about it this week.
How long has it been?
This was last week.
Okay.
And this is very uncommon. This executive has been very responsive. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but it's like threw me in one of those tailspins where I'm like, what the fuck? And then you start getting mad at yourself. I do, where I'm like, what did I do? What the hell happened here? Why aren't they responding? They should be responding faster. I wish I was at a different level, so I heard back from them. And you start going down this rabbit hole. I think the next step is like, well, I don't know what the next step is. I'll talk to Jay-Z about it, but yeah, that's what happened.
That's hard. It's hard when you feel like you've been blocked out of the process because your immediate reaction is the project's dead. Mm-hmm. The project's dead, or option B, which I don't know which is worse, they're moving on completely without me.
Totally.
And I don't know, like my solve for driving myself crazy about this has always just been to forget it and work on other things until I hear back, because like you can only work on what you can control, and that's the only thing you can control, but doesn't make it easier.
Yeah, and I don't like when people tell you things and then they don't follow up. Like really important things, like, and what I mean by that is I've had conversations with this executive and there were things that were left open-ended, and it was things that people should be communicating on. Like if you and I, Tasha, were having a conversation and you were like, hey, let's I want to produce something that you're writing. I'm like, that's great. And you're like, why don't you just send me over some new ideas of the draft that you're going to do or something. I'm like, great. So I send you over those ideas and you just never get back to me. My brain would be spinning. And for me personally, it's very hard to move past things.
Is it possible she may be wanting sort of an update on her end before she even gets back to you, so she has something to report?
No, she should be responsive.
No? Okay.
Anyway, so that's my soul-bearing moment.
It's tough. Mm-hmm. It happens to everyone. I feel like one of the biggest things I get is, how often should I be emailing someone because I haven't heard back from them?
Totally.
It's like a biggest thing.
Totally.
I don't know. Do you have advice for how long someone should wait in this kind of scenario?
No, because now I'm out of my own advice territory, and it's easy to say when it's not.
Living on emotion.
Totally. It's easy to say when it's not you. I'm writing other things so that it keeps me busy, but every once in a while, it like pops up in my brain, and I'm like, what the fuck? What's happening with these projects? I'm like, why don't I know? I should know something. I wrote them. Like if it's dead, it's dead. We should move on from it. I just need to know that. So I don't know. I'll talk to Jay-Z about it and get his advice and keep you posted.
Keep us posted on how it goes.
Oh, it's going to be great.
One.
That's a big one. Being ghosted by an executive you have a good relationship with. It's terrible.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
On that note.
Yeah, it's great. Great day.
Quote of the day.
Quote of the day.
We all have an obligation to keep moving the needle forward. Always. So don't ever give up on yourself. Billie Jean King.
Oh, now I'm going to reach out to this person right after this podcast. Never mind.
Please remember to rate and subscribe. Follow us at ActTwoWriters for more awesome writing stuff. You can follow me, Tasha, at Story Thursday, or on Instagram at... that's on Instagram, or on Twitter at Tasha 3.0.
Yes, I'm Joshua Hallman on Twitter, Josh Hallman on Instagram.
And as always, the Act Two podcast is a production of Act Two, a network and support group for the everyday working screenwriter. This episode was edited by Paul Lundquist, music by 414 Beg, which you can find on Spotify.